Welcome. This is Jeff Heggie of Jeff Heggie Coaching, and I'm excited today to have Stasia Rivera with me from AQ Athletics. So I just want to give you a bit of a background. I was just recently in Florida at Funnel Hacking Live, and I had the opportunity to meet McCall Jones. And when I got talking to her about the Confident Athlete program and a lot of the things I was doing, she's like, I've got someone you've got to meet. And so it took us a couple days to get hooked up, but we hooked up while we're in Florida and find out that we both live in Arizona. But Stasia has some amazing things she's working on, and everything that she's doing and has done fits so closely into what we talk about in the Confident Athlete program, in the High Achievers Mindset Secrets program, and all the things we're doing. So I'm excited to have her on. So welcome, Stasia. Thank you for being with me.
Thank you so much for having me. And so fun that we got to meet at FHL and through McCall, and just really grateful to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. So tell our audience a little bit more about yourself, what you do, where you came from, all those sort of things.
Yeah, I mean, as we were talking, this has all kind of been a happy accident. So I was a former D1 athlete, coached for 20 years, and then went back to school to pursue neuroscience. Little did I know that they would all come together. And so what I do right now is I work with actually aviation students and high-level college athletes and professional athletes with really coaching that internal stress response and that internal mental game through a performance system called AQU.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to get into that. So, I mean, we can start at the basics and work into the big stuff, but let's talk about mental performance. One of the things I talk about with my athletes a lot is that they put so much time and effort into the physical aspect of their game to become the best that they can be, to fulfill their big dreams and stuff, but they don't realize that the mental game is just as important. And they don't realize that they can sabotage everything they're doing if they don't focus on the mental game. So give me some of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that we've known this for a long time. I think everyone's known that through reading books or doing different types of self-help that it helped our athletic performance. But I think that the wave we're on right now is that neuroscience is backing that up, and it's giving us direct data on how we can really impact that internal experience so that we can replicate flow states. We used to just think like flow was this accidental happy thing that we stumbled on, and it really isn't. There's a lot of intention that you can do with your nervous system, with your internal emotional experience, thought experience, that can set you up for more consistent flow states. And I think kind of what you just touched on is the enjoyment behind it. Right. We're putting in all these hours, we're maxing out our physical ability. I tell college students when they're going off to college, you're not going to get that much better physically, probably. Like maybe 10%, maybe in your off season, you're going to fix your swing or do something. But overall, it's about the mental game. It's how you show up. It's how you walk through these challenges, like maybe moving away from your family or, a new coach or a new team. Like those are the things that are going to impact performance. And I feel like it's like the elephant in the room. Like we don't talk about it enough.
Right. Well, that opens up a whole can of worms of different directions we could go, because you're right. There's so many things that, in fact, on one of my other podcasts, my Daily Success Strategies podcast, the other day, I talked about that. Stop lying to yourself. There's so many things that elephant in the room that we don't want to address, we don't want to talk about. Right. But until we can identify those and admit the roadblocks we have, how are we going to get past them?
Right. And that's where my heart is serving in that place of just helping people recognize that there are solutions in that space. They don't always have to be as hard as I think some of us think they have to be. And it's just really nurturing them through that process and helping them not feel alone in it, but actually bringing them together. And this is one of the comments I get from all the athletes I work with is, oh, I thought I was the only one. I didn't know
Right.
that everyone else was struggling with these same things. And so really normalizing that and creating a culture and a language around that is a big part. It's a big principle in our program.
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. I want to start with so many things. Let's start with flow state.
Okay.
Talk a little bit more about what flow state is and what are some of the strategies you use with your clients to help them get into that flow state?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of things that have to be in alignment to achieve a flow state. And like I said before, I think we used to kind of stumble upon it by accident. But one of the biggest things that my background has provided me is the background of the nervous system and understanding that living language in our body and what it's actually saying to us. And so when I learn how to listen to that, and I learn how to listen to my emotional experience and process through those things, then I'm more able to perform. Instead, what I find is athletes and people in general kind of delay payment on that and ignore that and minimize that. And then at the most inopportune time possible, it's when it blows up, the opposite of flow, right? And so that's when you miss the game-winning shot, or you miss your serve in the net, or, you totally shank the shot. And I think that it's, like I said, it used to be this kind of lucky thing. Like, I'm feeling good. Life is good outside of sport. It's good in sport. I'm getting good grades. Everything's in alignment. So now I'm going to play well today. But there's so much that we can empower athletes to do to make sure that they're replicating that more often.
Right. And I mean, you're right. It's another one of those things that it's there, but how do we make it happen? I mean, I remember myself as an athlete. I remember specific times where I was in flow state and the next game thinking, how do I get back there?
Right. And so I think, like, to answer even more specifically, like a little bit deeper dive, is when we understand the way that our nervous system communicates with us and when we're in these survival states, and we can recognize when we're kind of shut down and we know why, and we recognize how to come out of that. What we really work with in AQU is helping athletes find a middle between the really high highs and the really low lows. And that has to do with understanding how you're wired and understanding more than just your thinking language, but what your nervous system is saying, what your emotional languages are saying. And we think this is really hard, but it's not. I mean, I'm teaching this, like I said, in the college classroom to athletes, and they're just taking it and running with it, and then telling me what else they need. And so that's a big part of this too, is we've really listened to them and really trusted their wisdom in what they needed to achieve these flow states. We know as athletes that we resonate with it and we feel it, but Gen Zs are in a whole new boat of challenges. And so we really have taken the time to ask them and listen to them with what do we need to build for them? What system do they need? So it's been really fun.
So are there some tools or anything you can share with our listeners that some of the strategies you use for that?
Definitely. I think the two things that I always try to implement and start with, whether I'm talking to a group for 5 minutes or 5 days, is to really work with breath. Breath is the easiest way to signal our nervous system to shift states. And when you can connect the breath to what is actually happening, like the sensational language, do I have tension in my chest? Are my shoulders tight? Am I clenching my jaw? When I can have breath kind of circulate with that, we can usually get a momentary change. And the more we do that, the more that our nervous system starts to kind of gain some resilience or some balance in that middle state that I was talking about, like the messages in the middle. That's where we want our people to be. So that's one big thing. And your nervous system communicates through the 5 senses. So we don't tend to have a very sensorial connection to our world because our brain is built to be on autopilot. And especially as the older we get, we learned at our conference, or I was happy that they said that stat to everyone. I was like, yes, 95% by the time we're 35, we're on autopilot.
Yeah.
So we really invite the athletes into connecting more with their environment through their five senses. So for example, like some athletes kind of start to feel stressed. I encourage them to they're a smell person. So I encourage them to put a little dot of something they like to smell, like an essential oil or a cologne or perfume. And then when they're stressed, they just kind of give a little, smell, and then they connect to their body. And this communicates with the nervous system that there isn't a threat out here. We can actually slow down and calm down. So if I'm a sound person, I put on my favorite song, I slow down, I come into the moment, I enjoy that experience. And those things are what helps there's many things, but that's one thing that helps that nervous system experience kind of slow down, helps the athlete come into the moment.
So, very cool. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the thing I like about working with athletes, you're going to get all different levels of, I don't want to say commitment, but just different levels of athletes, where you talk to one athlete and you're like, okay, let's talk meditation. Let's talk about your breathing. And they're like, are you nuts? No, I'm not going to do that crap. And then you've talked to the next one. He's like, hey, I'll do whatever you tell me to do if it's going to make me better. And so, talking about your breath and your breathing and stuff. And I'm not going to put you on the spot because I don't know what you're allowed to share or what you want to share at this point, but do you want to talk a little bit about what you're working on going forward?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, I love your point of, athlete readiness, and sometimes I feel like we're just planting seeds, and they might grow at another time. We really focus on building wins in life and sport, and that's really what AQU is. And so we've developed a very unique platform where athletes can assess themselves, and they can be able to really know how coachable they are, what their actual personality type is athletically, where they need to grow to kind of achieve those flow states more often. And what I really like is it helps connect them to, I think, empathy for themselves and empathy for their teammates. I just got a bunch of comments back, and several of the athletes said, like, it made me realize that my teammates handle things differently than me, and that they respond to things differently than me. And I think as coaches and teachers, we have to remember that too. So I try to give them a bunch of tools so that they can really empower themselves to pick the ones that work for them. And it's like, maybe they're not ready for breath yet. That's okay. Like, we have a lot of other choices for you, to help you find what works for you. So that's a big part of the system that we've been building, and we'll go to beta test in the next couple of weeks. Not beta test we've already tested this, but the tech piece, making sure all our technical stuff is right. So we have an awesome group that's going to help us out with that. But yeah, it's looking very promising to have some partnerships, and we're in talks with some big people in the industry. And I don't think I can say more than that right now, just to honor them. But I think it's just going to be so fun, because I think all of us, the people I'm talking to, myself, we just have a heart to serve. We just want to empower athletes to have the best experience, because we know we might have missed out a little bit on our own. And we also, maybe our parents, or we know what really could be possible here now that we have more information and just more content to give them.
Right. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't want to step out of my place and mention a partnership before you were supposed to be talking about that. So
I appreciate that. Yeah, I just want to be above board, and I once I can announce it, maybe I can come back and we can geek out about it. But yeah, I'm really excited. It was a big surprise, and then kind of not. I think we're all just really rising up right now to support these athletes and to really lift them up and help them be who they can be. I love this generation. They're just killing it. And we just got to give them a little bit of tools to handle the stress that they face, and they're just going to take off. And they are. It's so cool.
Well, I want to build on that because of a conversation you and I had in Florida. One of the things in my Confident Athlete program in Module 6 I talk about mental health and I talk about anxiety and stress and depression and all those things. And you really put it in a different light for me, talking about, you know, my parents only knew what my grades were when I brought my report card home. My parents couldn't get on their phone and track where I was, those sort of things. Do you want to touch on that? How do we, or how do athletes deal with the enormous amount of pressure and stress put on them and the mental health side of things?
Yeah. Oh, there's so much to say there, but I think the thing that I hear the most from them is they feel an enormous amount of pressure to perform. They feel an enormous stress to always be on. And I think that's my concern for them, short and long term. They're asking them, their nervous system, their health, their mental health, to just be on all the time. Even when they're trying to take a break, like when the Netflix and chill day comes, which we call fall, when they fall down because they've managed so much the whole time, even then, the saddest part for me, Jeff, is they're sitting there guilting themselves, telling themselves that they should be doing something. So they're not even giving themselves the respite and the recovery to come back and like start again. They're even judging that and feeling pressured in that. And I think that when we start to give them permission to downregulate and to just put the brake on and just find even those 5 minutes, 5 hours, whatever that chunk of time is, I think that's one of the biggest things that we invite them into, is this, just to start managing their time for their mental wellness. And it's usually a foreign concept when we start. They're like, oh my gosh, I just never even thought of that, to put 5 minutes on my schedule. And it's almost like endearing when they say that, because I'm like, oh, yeah, we got to make sure we have that balance in our pursuit of excellence.
And I think that's a strong message for parents too.
Yeah.
Because I see a lot of parents that, hey, you know what? My 6-year-old is so athletic. He's NFL for sure. And I mean, it's boom, boom, right from 6-year-old on. And then, you look at it, Anthony Trucks is a great example. He didn't even start playing football till he was 14, and he sucked. Right. and he ends up in the NFL. Exactly. So we don't need to start grooming them at 6 years old if we think they have a future in it. And we've just got to keep that joy in the sport.
Right. And kind of back to the very first part, is like, we also have to, I think we have permission to show up to coaching the internal experience for them too, and making sure that we're providing those balance points and rewarding recovery and downtime. I mean, there's not an Olympian or a high level athlete in this world that has mastered success that doesn't have a massive recovery program. That they sleep this amount of time, they ice this, they take off the time, they, everything that they do to be able to maintain this incredible consistency. And I feel like we're overlooking that and almost living in like a fear culture of like, yeah, but we can't miss an opportunity. We just have to get them in, and it's like, well, yeah. And, they're 6, or, they can have a life. And yeah, I think there's a lot of athletes that come late to the party. I don't think that's an uncommon thing. And I find that they tend to be a little more resilient and have a little bit more kind of life balance going on when they come in a little later.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that I get asked a lot, and I talk a lot with athletes, is, I guess it's partially on the topic of flow, but when we're talking about confidence, especially athletes that are high level, have high expectations for themselves, and then they're in the middle of a game and all of a sudden they miss a shot, they miss the next shot, they have a turnover. How do you get them to keep their level of confidence up during those times? I mean, it's one way to say, here's the long-term things that you need to do to have confidence. But what are the things you need to do now in the middle of a game?
Yeah. I think one of the most powerful things that I've heard, and I think from others and then shared with the athletes, is teaching them that actually confidence is an emotion. I for some reason culturally we think it's a state or a personality attribute. It's not true. Like confidence is, is an emotion. It's an emotional experience. And so usually what we need to do is train that athlete to come into that zone of confidence by inviting the five senses experience or something new for them to kind of shift into that. And that's something that's really important about them understanding the wiring rather than the thinking. That's something that's very unique to our approach that I think is kind of missing or just not in these new approaches that are coming out. Is actually helping them with that internal shift, not just the thinking shift. Right. And when we do that, then we can we talk about how emotions last for mostly usually 60 to 90 seconds. So ideally, even if that athlete like is experiencing an emotion of, probably some fear or some embarrassment, maybe some anger at themselves because they missed something, and then that shifted the confidence, we want to bring them back into it, by inviting a time that they did feel confident or a time that they did do it right. And the system will shift. It makes me really sad that we try to teach everyone, or what we think we can think our way through these problems. Right. It's just, if we could think our way through, we wouldn't be making errors ever. And so that's where I just got really lucky in learning the neuroscience and the nervous system and just, just all of that in my trauma and addictions career. And really just took a deep dive into that internal experience because I had to show up to some really acute people that were having really examples of problems that could be life and death, so I had to get really good at shifting that for them. Like, talk about a confidence issue, and so we had to get really good and really fast at helping them recognize what they could do for themselves in those moments when they were really feeling challenged. And, because of that, it's just gotten to be this thing that then the athletes have adopted and helped kind of shift into their language and what they need. So it's pretty cool. I love it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Now, most of what I work with are athletes on this topic. But I think just as important is the parent and the coach. I mean, even, in one of my modules, the module that I talk about mental health, it's because my daughter went to college, went to play basketball at college, and she started struggling with this and dealing with it. And me as a coach and as a dad, dealing with stuff like that in the team, my attitude was suck it up, get on the line.
Yeah.
And so it's a learning curve for parents, coaches, everyone. So what are your suggestions or thoughts with that? How do parents and coaches understand this and understand how they can help their own players with the mental game?
Yeah. What we choose to focus on is really readdressing the right kinds of conversations to have, conversations that actually promote connection and trust. We mentioned earlier that this generation is just different, and that's something it's like a prerequisite. If they're going to work for you, they need to feel like they can trust you and that you care, you have their back. And when they have that, they'll actually work even harder than a lot of generations that I've worked with. But that has to be on board. And the main way that we communicate that is through our voices and our faces and our body language and our ability to empathize and to be able to have and or conversations. So I know you're really struggling, and what are we going to do? And I think just those simple little tweaks in the messaging promotes that connection and brings that confidence that we want to see in our athletes, whether they're our kids or whether we're coaching them. And I think I told you in Florida, I stepped away from the court of coaching for, I think, over 10 years. I'll have to look, but a long time. and never thought I was coming back. And right now I'm coaching high school athletes because my daughter decided to come back and compete. And it's just so funny to be back, but it's almost in a way a privilege because I'm getting to coach them with this lens of what I have now. You know, that it's not get on the line. It's not suck it up. It's not, what the heck's wrong with you? You know, you're shutting down at the worst time. It's not that those same conversations aren't happening, but the languaging is different. The communication is different. And it's really about empowering them and holding them accountable in a way that builds trust and relationship instead of power dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, the main thing we need. As parents, we need to remember what it was like to be 16, 15, 14, and all we really want to do is feel seen and heard. That's what all of us want. I get the privilege of listening to people for a career, and I promise you that's what everyone says. Just want to feel heard, just want to feel seen, just want to feel appreciated. And so I think we forget really easily when we enter into competition. But the best teams battle together. They trust each other. That's the intangible that we have to start coaching.
So to add on to what you just said, with a athlete that say they're playing club, they go out, they lose, whether it's they played bad, they played great, they lost. What's that conversation on the ride home?
Well, first, it might not even need to be on the ride home. we might need a little more space between that. But for me, I think the position is curiosity. So if we want a generation that isn't failing to thrive, then we need to ask good questions. And we need to ask them what they think. And if they can't assess that, we need to help them learn how to. And so we need to get them more comfortable with self-feedback and feedback from other people. But it really starts with themselves. Like, how do you think it went? And you're going to get an immediate answer. Oh, okay. Well, what does that mean? Ask another question, right? Well, I guess it was fine, or I thought I killed it, or whatever they're gonna say, right? And so then it's like helping them maybe see their blind spots. Well, what did you think about this, or what do you think you could do? Do you need support? Do you want to shoot some extra shots this week? And I think those conversations tend to be so much more empowering, so much more actually confidence building, because we're giving them the agency to recognize that they're in charge. And they need to feel that from us as parents, whether it's, when they're under our house and we're hanging out with them all the time, or especially by the time that they transition to go compete in college.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I've told a lot of parents is, you know what? They know they missed that foul shot. They know the things they did wrong. You're not going to make it better by rehashing it 1,000 times on the way home.
Yeah.
So I love the questioning and building on it from there.
Yeah, curiosity. I think a heart of curiosity in parenting and coaching just goes so much further. And honestly, it amazes me what you stumble on, like what they end up saying.
Right.
I'm like, every time. It doesn't matter whether it's the kids I'm helping coach right now, or my own daughter, or in a parenting role, my son, or talking to somebody I care about, like my husband. It's like when you ask the right questions, it's a totally different conversation.
Right. Mm-hmm. Now, when we were out there talking, I had mentioned to you Tammy Matheny, that wrote the Confident Athlete book. One of the things in there that she talks a lot about in building your confidence is talking the talk and walking the walk. So one is your self-talk, and two is your body language. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on those two subjects?
I couldn't agree more. And I think that's, again, like, it's all the way we see it, right? The lens. But I think that that's asking for nervous system repatterning. My only concern is I don't want to see people just overriding. And that's sometimes what I think we're encouraging is like swap a tool for a tool. Right. Where I feel like I really want to empower athletes, and where we stand is, are you aware of what's actually going on that makes you need this other tool? And so, but I absolutely believe, like, In those things, you're offering that neural pathway experience to expand. You're giving your brain new options on that autopilot menu. And it definitely can come down to those moments. And I think that that is part of the confidence formula for sure. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Now you've played at a high collegiate level yourself.
Mm-hmm.
What is your suggestion to young athletes, whether it can be anywhere from middle school to a senior in high school? What are the habits they need to put into place, the success habits in their life that they need to make into a habit to be able to get to the next level?
Oh man. I think it's what we're talking about right now. I think it's taking the internal experience seriously. I think that it stopped me. I can tell you that, and I didn't have the career I could have collegiately because I didn't know how to communicate with myself or others. And so I guess that's the biggest invitation I would say is learn how to identify what's actually going on with you, why you actually do what you do, so that you can learn how to change it, and not end up in these cycles that are so frustrating and so upsetting and disappointing, honestly, for many athletes. Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that's been shocking in my research and talking to current and former athletes, one of the things that it's like why I serve, almost every, if not every, I don't want to speak in extremes, but pretty close, athlete that I've talked to that played collegiately or at a high level, every single one of them, when I tell them what I'm doing, they're like, oh my gosh, I needed that. I'm like, right. Yeah. And they say that they really didn't enjoy their experience. It was good, but it wasn't great. It was fun. We didn't win as much as I wanted to. And it's just always this story. And it just is like, honestly, part of what gets me to just keep going every day. Because if we're going to put that much time and that many hours into what we're doing, I feel like we can enjoy it. And there are moments of that for all of us. And it's not all about fun and enjoyment, but there is a missing thing there. And I think we all know it. And I think that's what we're starting to fall into, more strategies and solutions versus just like, oh, well, that's the zone. You just got in the zone. You got lucky today, we just had a magic team. It's like, well, did you? Or did you actually do something exceptional with that group? Or did you have some exceptional athletes that brought skill sets that then created the winning ability? And that's what we know, is that's repeatable. Some of the college teams, especially one in particular that we've worked with, we started working with them. They went from a 50-50 season to a 750 season in 1 year. They went from no All-Americans to an All-American. They went from unranked to ranked. So we know that this stuff is helping and working. It's just giving them the right tools.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, do you have a specific strategy, style, program, anything when it comes to goal setting when you work with your athletes? Do you have anything specific you do with them for that?
Yeah. This might be a little controversial, but for me, I lovingly and jokingly say that I feel like goals are so 90s, because I really think it's about habits. And so I think it's great to have a goal, but what I find with most athletes is they establish what I call a ladder goal, where they can't grab it. It's not broken down enough. It's too lofty. It's not real enough. And so I find that a lot of people fail. And then there's that confidence issue, or that judgment, or that emotion of embarrassment, and or even anger at themselves. And so what I encourage is to really break it down and almost reverse engineer your process. So it's so much different for me to say, I want to lose 10 pounds by January. It's so much different if I say, I'm going to work out 20 minutes a day. I'm going to wake up. I'm going to get the right amount of sleep. Like, I have so much more of a likelihood to get to that goal if I have the habit structure in place. So
Right.
we focus a lot on the science behind the habits. And again, really helping the athlete identify why they're doing what they're doing. I think that that's what's missing. It was missing for me. I have one of the strongest mindsets of a lot of people I know. I'm pretty focused. But when I learned how to actually identify my barriers and why I was sabotaging or why I was shutting down or why I was avoiding things, that's when it was a game changer. So that's our goal, is to help them understand that layer of things so that they have that sustainability to just win in their life and their sport. And there's just a lot in that part, like I said, the wiring of how we are built, that once you know that, it's the game over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, this is incredible. I love this. We could go on and on talking about this.
I don't want it.
Share with our listeners how they find out more about you, follow you, all of those things.
Yeah. So the best way to follow us right now is on social, Instagram and on Facebook. And so that's at AQ Athletics Official. And our funnel's coming out, our website's coming out in about a week. So that'll be there, and that will be www.aqathlete.com. And that's where they can find out about our offerings, more about us, what's coming. We obviously, we all went to FHL, which was a marketing conference, and came back inspired. And so we're looking at 2022 and looking at some live events and some really exciting stuff. So that'll be where they can find that. Yeah. Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And the challenge is coming.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And I think one of the things we're really trying to do differently than a lot of products out there is we're really trying to show up to the athletes and then the coaches. And so we'll have the same program for the coaches, and I have coached a lot of coaches, but we're starting off with athletes, and then also having a book come out by the end of the year for the coaches, so they at least have something. They don't leave them high and dry, and then we'll be building their program and helping the teams kind of have that ability to really work on the team communication as well. Like, how do we win championships and build culture with all this cool stuff behind this?
And the cool thing about all this is we're talking athletics right now. And I think you and I talked about it when we last visited. There's such a reflection on athletics, entrepreneurship, life, everything we do. So these are things that if you're listening to this and you're not an athlete, these are still things you need to be applying into your life. So this is awesome. And what my hope is this is the first episode you're a guest on, not the last.
Well, yeah. I love talking to you in Florida. I've loved today. I would love to come back as we keep moving forward and update you and your people. Yeah, that would be an honor. So yeah, anytime. Awesome. I love geeking out on this stuff. So thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, because there's so much more we can talk about, and I'm the same way. I love talking about it, and it's a way to serve athletes. You and I aren't going to work with every athlete. We wish we could, but there's athletes out there that we're not going to. And if they can get anything out of these episodes that's going to help them, that's fantastic. So thank you for sharing with us, and all the best.
Thank you. You too. Thank you for all you do. I appreciate it.
Hey, athletes and parents of athletes. So much time, money, and effort is put into the physical aspect of your sport to become the best you can be. But the mental game, it's often neglected, and it's just as important as the physical game. In fact, it's usually the differentiator between the good and the great athletes. Come and join me in the Confident Athlete program, where you'll learn to control your confidence, develop a powerful mindset, and unlock your full potential. Go to jeffheggie.com/confidentathlete to find out more. I look forward to seeing you there.